Hello, good afternoon. I'm Rachel Cox. I am sharing this video to share with you this afternoon some experiences on my career thus far in international agriculture as a part of your formation in your introduction course on career options in agronomy. I graduated from the Iowa State Agronomy program in undergrad in 2009, and then I went on to get my master's degree and graduated in 2012 in both agronomy and natural resources management at Iowa State and finished in 2012. So I went on to finish after graduating in 2012 in August. I moved to Mexico in October of that same year in 2012 and started my career about 5 years ago. And so I'm going to be talking to you about my experiences in what led up to that while I was at Iowa State and what I've been doing since I moved to Mexico in 2012. So I'm going to start with a really pretty embarrassing photo. So I'm going to trust that you guys will be nice to me when I share this. And I'm doing this remotely, so even if you're going to laugh at me and be mean, it's fine. You aren't meeting me in person. So I'm going to go ahead and trust you and share this. This is a picture from when I did a World Food Prize internship in Kenya in 2005. So a very long time ago, 12 years ago. I was sent by the World Food Prize Foundation on an all expenses paid trip internship to Nairobi, Kenya. The World Food Prize Foundation is in Des Moines, Iowa. If you guys haven't heard of it, it's a great organization for young people to get involved with international ag and issues with hunger and food security. And they sent me to do a 2-month internship when I was 18 by myself to Kenya, which is a really long way away. At the time, I was super excited and motivated, and my parents were terrified, and I didn't think twice about it. And now that I'm like kind of grown up, I'm like, whoa, what were they thinking? That was a pretty terrible idea. But I went ahead and did it anyway, and I'm really glad that I did. And it was a great jumping into international agriculture idea. So I started my agriculture research career off as well. This is me in the field looking at insect eggs, actually, studying beneficial insects. And I started researching. I spent the summer just counting eggs. And it sounds really boring. And actually, I don't know how many of you have done research or like worked in labs or in the field. I highly recommend it. Even though it can be pretty boring. It's really good experience and it's going to help you get jobs down the road. Um, so yeah, basically that was in farmers' fields in rural Kenya, and the farmers just stared at me the entire summer, and they basically just pointed and laughed and spoke another language that I didn't speak, and just spent the whole summer laughing at me because they didn't know what I was doing, and they just saw me counting, like staring at leaves and counting things, which is what I was doing. It didn't make that much sense to me either. I didn't know what I was doing, but I came back to Iowa State, started freshman year at Iowa State that year. Pretty much right away, I got a job in a lab because I already had research experience. And as soon as I could, got involved in ag study abroad, and got chosen to go on the Uganda summer study abroad trip through Ag Study Abroad because I'd already been to Sub-Saharan Africa. I'd already done a research project. Pretty much as a freshman, already had all of the requisites to be chosen, even though most of the other students going were juniors, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So the sooner you get started, the better, because you're going to have more experience, you're going to be more competitive for jobs down the road. So I went to Uganda, also a great experience. As soon as I could, I got signed up for a trip to Ecuador, got signed up for a study abroad for a semester in Ecuador, and I just kept doing as many things as I could. I just fell in love with traveling abroad. And the best part about the agronomy department is they have tons of money to study abroad. And honestly, now that I've graduated from college, no one pays for you to go go abroad for free. I have to pay to travel on my own, and it's a huge bummer. So enjoy having people pay for you to go on beautiful trips to tropical countries as long as you possibly can, because as soon as you grow up, no one's going to pay for that. So enjoy it while you can. I think most of you are probably sophomores, so you have 3 years left at least of free trips. They usually pay for 50% of it, plus the Ag Study Abroad office will pay for some, plus the regular study abroad office will pay for some. You can get almost the whole trip paid for. Don't waste time. Don't waste time. Enjoy free trips. This is my biggest piece of advice for you. Even if you look ridiculous and farmers are laughing at you while you count insect eggs in the middle of a field in sub-Saharan Africa, it's totally worth it because you get to travel for free. And for the rest of your life, you're not going to get to do that. So take advantage of that. So after I finished school, I focused my master's work mostly in Iowa, but I did an internship as well during my graduate work in Costa Rica. I had some money on my fellowship that I could use to do some research abroad as well. That was part of my thesis. And while I was doing that, I did some intensive Spanish courses so that when I graduated, I could get a job working abroad. So as soon as I graduated, I got a job in Mexico at CIMMYT, which is the International Maize and Wheat Research Center, which is located, the headquarters are in Texcoco, Mexico, which is just right outside of Mexico City. And yeah, like a month after graduation from my master's degree, I moved to Mexico. So I'm going to show you some pictures and talk about that experience. I think everyone in my family thought, okay, she'll do that for a couple years and get it out of her system, and then she'll move back to Iowa or somewhere in the US and be normal again, and we'll all move on with our life. Well, I never got it out of my system, and the more time I live in other places, the more I love it. And as you can see by this picture, one of those reasons is because the food is amazing. My first job at CIMMYT was to coordinate a network of research sites all across Mexico with partners, with Mexican research partners at universities, at national research centers, with NGOs, which is non-governmental organizations, a number of different ones. So it was about 50 different research sites on conservation agriculture all across Mexico. And every place I went, I got to try new food, I got to try new different kinds of drinks, alcoholic, non-alcoholic, and the partners that I would visit, they would want to show me just what the traditional food and drink was, where I was visiting. So basically I got to just eat amazing food. And this is some of it, some enchiladas from one of the places I was visiting. So sorry if it's the afternoon and you're hungry there, but I just wanted to tempt you to come visit Mexico because it's one of the best places in the world. One of the best parts of this job was working with partners. I'd show up in a new place, they'd take me to a piece of land, and we would just talk about how we were going to design a research site. What challenges farmers faced in that area. We would meet with farmers, we would meet with scientists, we would meet with land technicians and discuss what were their biggest issues with land conservation, with water, with soil, and we would hash out a research design. This is some of the research technicians. You can see here, they love a good hat. They are mostly men, so it was a very interesting challenge being a young woman dealing with mostly men and often older men. That was often a big challenge. You can see the large range of soils that we're working with. You're going to see throughout the pictures. This particular research site that we're working at we were looking at conservation agriculture, but also biological control of insects using pheromones. So this is one of the most foremost biocontrol entomologists in Mexico, Dr. Baena. Always an honor and pleasure to work with. I wanted to show this picture because you can see I was in my CIMMYT uniform with the official logo, but there was a Mexican national soccer game, and in Mexico they take soccer, which they called football there, very seriously, and it was leading up to the last World Cup. So there's a World Cup coming up. It's not as popular in the U.S., but we had to all wear our Mexican soccer jerseys under our work clothes, and halfway through the day take a pause in the workday to go to a bar and watch the soccer game, because soccer is so important to everyone in Mexico that everyone stops working when the national team plays soccer, and we all went and watched the soccer game. So when you work in other countries, your world changes, because it's not just about the work that you're doing. It's about learning to live and adapt to different cultures and different ways of living than you've lived your entire life. And I guess you might hate that, but for me, it has been the most beautiful process of adapting and changing who I am and finding a place I felt more comfortable in than I ever felt growing up in Oklahoma and Iowa. Oh, I already showed that picture. This is just more experienced collaborators, and you can see the great variation of kinds of lands we're working on. Obviously, we were having a research plot on this flat land. Many farmers have very hilly land, so there's a huge variation in the kind of land we work with. This is in Iowa. We studied corn and soybean production on flat land in Iowa, and when we talked about slopes, we were talking about 5% slopes, really quite flat land, and everyone was using a tractor. And that just isn't a reality for a lot of the world. And so the way we were trained as agronomists isn't necessarily real for much of the world. And it has been a fascinating process of growing as a scientist, as an agronomist, as a person, to get out of this very comfortable landscape that we grew up in as agronomists at Iowa State. And it's interesting to think of how we were trained as agronomists. Obviously, some of the best education in agricultural science we get at Iowa State. It's one of the best ranked universities in the world for agriculture. And when you mention where you studied, when I meet these agronomists, some of my favorite agronomists, these guys here, actually, they're from Guatemala. When you mention Iowa State, Universidad de Iowa State, they know it, they recognize it, and they're like, wow, it's a great university, Iowa, land of the corn. And they work with corn. We work with corn in Mexico and Guatemala. It's from Mexico. Corn is from Mexico and Guatemala. Yet we didn't learn about growing corn by hand. We didn't learn about growing native corn and how we would adapt and adjust our recommendations as agronomists for farmers who grow corn this way. So it's kind of a catch-22 of how, despite that it's one of the most well-recognized universities in the world, we don't actually learn things that might be adaptable to the ways in which maize is grown for a good chunk of farmers around the world. I want relevant to that here is this piece of ancient architecture that I visited in the Central Highlands of Mexico. It's thousands of years old, where you can see Aztec ancient paintings that have been preserved over time because of how they, the way they were crumbled and fell down, they weren't exposed to sunlight. So actually, these paintings are original, and and when they were discovered, Cacaxtla is the name of the pyramids that they're within. When they were discovered, they found these paintings in enough of a original shape that they could detect these pictures, and you can see maize actually in these original Aztec paintings because maize is native to Mexico, like I said, and as you know from studying it. So when you work with maize in Mexico, it's like almost a spiritual crop because it's thousands of years old from this place. So it's not just a commodity. It's not something that's just traded. It's part of the culture, it's part of the religion, it's part of the history, it's part of the food that they eat every single day. And you can see it. It's on these ancient paintings that you visit in Aztec pyramids. And so it's fascinating to me how growing up in a place that corn is so intrinsic to who we are and what we grow and what's in our landscape, and also now living and working in a place that it's also so intrinsic to the food and the culture and religion, but in such completely different ways, right? Um, in Iowa, it's not part of our religion in the way it is for ancient Aztec ruins, but it's almost equally important in our economies and everything, but in very, very distinct ways. So it's like coming full circle in my life on maize on two different parts has been a very interesting process. So when you become a scientist, you become much more than just a maize agronomist. You learn to negotiate. You learn to discuss. You learn to go far beyond just the details of the science. You learn to negotiate budgets. You learn to negotiate between what you need to get to the outcomes of the project and how to do that. And when you add a whole different culture and a whole different language on top of that, it's complex. And let me tell you, there's a lot of days where it would just be easier to stay at home in Iowa where I speak the same language and I have the same cultural background as everyone in that room. And you can see here, there are only men at this table. This is my seat here. This computer, that's me. You can see there's only men, and they're all Mexican except me. And this was my first job out of grad school. So your first job's hard no matter what. You add gender and you add culture and you add language on top of that. It was so hard, and there were so many days I was so tired, and I probably just went home and cried and like had a couple glasses of wine and was just like, oh my goodness, this is hard. And I could have moved home. I could have gotten a job in Iowa. It probably would have paid more. But the rewards and benefits of pursuing a career that has the deep meaning of working to improve the lives of farmers in a country that's more impoverished than your own, that's more fulfilling because when you do achieve something like this, when you do achieve success and results that you know go far beyond just a good salary for yourself because you know it helps farmers who can now feed their families better, who can now conserve their soil when they're being severely affected by drought and climate change, much harsher than in your own country, where it's not make or break of if that farmer can feed their family, which obviously it's concerning in my own country because our farmers back home are also facing floods and droughts. But usually, because we have crop insurance, it doesn't come down to can they feed their family. It comes down to do they get an insurance check. It's a very different ball game. And so it's a really fulfilling thing at the end of the day. And on top of that, you get to have amazing food. You get to travel and see beautiful things like Aztec ruins. You get to try food and drinks that you would never try if you stayed in the comfort of your own home. It really adds up, and it really overcomes the overwhelming frustrations that you face when you're sitting in a room full of 10 men who don't speak the same language as you. You push through, and then you're like, yeah, I can accomplish more than I ever knew that I was capable of accomplishing. And I just want to show this picture to kind of wrap up the Mexico section. Coming back to this kind of um, intergrain maize being so much more than just a commodity. In the work I've done in Mexico and Guatemala, this is a protest that happened in Guatemala actually. There's a highway block. This community shut down the whole highway that you cross the country. It's the only highway that you can cross the country with. They shut it down because there was a law that was going to pass that was putting a threat to them being able to use their native maize seeds. And it says at the bottom, el maíz es sagrado. Maize is sacred. Because it is, because it came from their land. It literally turned from a weed into their food, their daily bread. It is where it's from there. It's from Mesoamerica, from South Mexico to Guatemala. That's where maize came from. And it is part of their culture and their religion and their beliefs and their daily bread. That is maize. So, when we study maize, when we just talk about it as like something we grow, something part of our economics, when we make decisions solely based on like the economics of N fertilizer, if we apply that logic, our economic only based logic to that system, we will never be able to fully make the kinds of changes we want to make because it's so much more than that to them. And so in our education system, if we want to be able to work internationally, we have to try to adapt and change to include cultural and spiritual beliefs as we go ahead and work in international contexts. And each context is different, right? So let me use that to transition into my work in Guatemala. I was in Mexico for 3 years in that position, coordinating the 50 research sites, during which I had the opportunity to start making some contacts while still at CIMMYT in Guatemala. And I had the chance to lead a proposal with USAID, and we won an $8 million project with USAID to start doing some work on native maize and soil conservation in highland systems in Guatemala. So that's some native maize you can see there, and I want to show you some of the conservation ag you can see here with the nice volcano in the background, some of the beautiful red maize, some of the really tall native maize plants. You can see the native maize genetic diversity is incredible because it's one of the spots where native maize came from. Black maize, blue maize, purple maize, red maize, yellow, white, everything mixed together, anything in between, anything you can imagine. In Guatemala, there's 27 different indigenous groups, 27 different languages. I don't know if you know, check out a map, maybe open it up on Google Maps right now. Guatemala is a tiny country. 27 different indigenous languages, plus Spanish, in Guatemala. It's a lot of diversity. Cultural language diversity, native maize diversity. It's a huge amount of diversity. So I helped run that project, get it started up, and pass it off. And then moved to Rwanda. Little picture here, myself saying hello again. So you can see I evolved a little bit from my start off in Kenya. Then headed back to East Africa 4 years, no, sorry, I guess it would have been 8 years after that. A year and a half ago I moved to Rwanda to lead another USAID project, but with a different research center, the International Potato Center this time, to run an orange flesh sweet potato project to focus on nutrition and income for women farmers and to focus on nutrition for small children in Rwanda. So you can see here one of our signs. I just want to share some pictures. This is our lead agronomist for the project, Jean-Claude, and some of the women farmers we were working with. And these are the orange sweet potatoes here. You can see the bright, colorful fabrics of the farmers. and the very small pieces of land we're working with in Rwanda. So if you thought Guatemala looked like a small country, Rwanda is even smaller. Pick up your phones, look at Google Maps again. Rwanda is in East Africa, and you can look on the map. It's like Kenya's on the coast. Go over a little, you see Uganda, and then Rwanda, almost right on the equator, right in the southern hemisphere, right below the equator. Um, Most people know Rwanda from the movie Hotel Rwanda. It's a pretty accurate movie, actually. Highly recommend it if you haven't learned much before about the genocide there in 1994. Uh, a little under 1 million people died in around 4 months in the genocide. Um, that's 22 years ago the genocide happened. The country is still severely affected by that genocide. The dictator who took power after the genocide is still in place. It's a peaceful country now, but same dictator in place for 22 years means that liberty and freedom is still severely restricted. You can see the soils are very red, oxy soils, some volcanic soils. There's a number of volcanoes in the country. Last year there was a lot of severe drought, so the country's still facing a lot of issues with malnutrition, food security, food insecurity, a lot of AIDS. AIDS was used as a weapon during the genocide to infect women and children with AIDS through rape. It's a difficult place. We promoted the use of improved varieties of orange flesh sweet potato to improve the consumption of vitamin A, but also the varieties were higher producing than local varieties. People were already eating a lot of sweet potato in Rwanda, so it wasn't a new crop, just an improved variety of the same crop that people were already eating. We were mostly focused on women farmers, and here you can see a woman seed producer for the local distribution of those seeds. I moved to Rwanda because I was trying to get a change of scenery, but as soon as I moved there, I quickly realized that what I really loved was Mexico and Guatemala. So while I was there, in my free time, I spent developing a business idea. It's what we call a social enterprise or a social environmental enterprise, which is kind of like an NGO, which is a nonprofit organization where we're not looking to make a lot of money for ourselves, but use a business model. So we call it a company, using a business model to create social and environmental change. So we're focusing our work for now on Guatemala, but eventually plan to expand to Mexico and other parts of Latin America. This is my co-founder in Guatemala, Mari. I worked with her before in Guatemala. This is in our commercial kitchen. You can see some of our landscapes in Guatemala and coming back to some of the pictures of native maize. These are some of the products we work with. What we do is we take native maize, other native and traditional crops like amaranth, chia, pumpkin seeds, coconut, chocolate. All of these things are grown in from or traditional to native or traditional to the region. Native plants used for tea, and we transform them into gourmet food for the like granola bars or tea, like gourmet tea for the U.S. specialty food market. So we're using these really respected native crops that are usually have no market value in Guatemala or Mexico. So farmers who grow them live in poverty. We're adding value to them and connecting them to a market that will pay a high price for them. then making sure that money will make it back to those farmers and to their communities and invest in environmental conservation and social improvement like empowerment projects. You can see here our website. Sorry, my dogs are making noise. You can see here our website, earthempower.com, and our Facebook group or Facebook page, facebook.com/earthempower. And our stack of some of our granola bars here. We just started, so our products aren't available in grocery stores yet. We're about to start our crowdfunding campaign at the end of this week. You can see more about that on our Facebook page. That we'll start posting information about that soon this week, and then within 6 to 12 months, those products will be available in stores in the United States. As a startup company, what we're doing now is building the foundation. So we're working to build our supply chains with women farmers in Guatemala and Mexico. We're building our plants in Guatemala for the production, and focusing on all of the social environmental criteria that we need to make sure we're having the social environmental impact in the long term. That is what our founding values are for the company. So basically all of the work that I've done in my past in agriculture and environment and nutrition, I'm now channeling into my own company to make sure I can have the direct and focused impact that I want with the communities that I work with and with the team members that I want to work with. Which has been incredibly challenging to start on my own completely with no formal institutional support, but also incredibly liberating to have full freedom to use my talents and my passion to work and focus on exactly what I want to work on. It's been a nice evolution from my starting job as a complete focused agronomist, as a scientist, putting my agronomic work into research design and supporting scientists in Mexico to do better research, more into then a project manager for USAID funded projects at research centers to guide other scientists to make sure they have the resources that they need to be better scientists, whereas I was no longer in a scientific role. And now, as the CEO and founder of my own company, I'm able to catalyze change through empowering other people to fully live up to their passions and their ambitions in the roles that they want to be in, and designing strategic change in the creation of an organization that combines science, agricultural, environmental justice, and human nutrition all into one integrated organization that really combines all of my academic history, my work history, and what I'm truly passionate about, all into one organization that I get to be in charge of. And, at the same time, be really humble and say, look, I don't know what I'm doing regarding this topic, and reach out to other people and bring them in and get them to help me. So it's been a truly stressful experience, and we have a lot more work to do, but also empowering and exciting and fun process as well to start this new organization, Earth Empower. So I always start back in the days at Iowa State and the people who helped get me in the door in the agronomy department and brought me in and taught me how to get funds for Iowa State study abroad and agronomy study abroad and agronomy scholarships, to make sure that I always had the experiences that I wanted to have to build fully the career and life and experience that I wanted to have. And there aren't that many schools and there aren't that many groups of people who are so committed to helping you as an individual build that life that you want. And I think that the beauty of Iowa State is that you can walk into the office and about five different people have the job. It's just literally the job of those five different people to help you build the life and career that you want to have. And so, right now, as I'm an entrepreneur, I'm out on my own. I wish I had five people who could help me do that. Um, and later on in life, you don't. So take advantage of that, whether it be for international, an international career, or whether it be for a career, in Iowa or somewhere else in the U.S. Take advantage of the support systems that people are offering you now because they are incredibly valuable and always the nicest people in the world. So enjoy them fully. And since I couldn't be there in person or connect via Skype, please get in touch with me if you have any questions. Um, you can do so via this website. There's a contact us form, but you can also get my email and email me directly. I'd be happy to chat about anything. And pretty soon down the line, we'll have internships with the company, as well as in Guatemala and Mexico, as well as in the US. So hopefully, for those who are interested in international opportunities, we can figure out something that we could work on together. So have a great day and thanks for listening. Bye. Oh, I forgot one thing. When you do have a student abroad, this is a very important last slide. Um, none of it, and any career in the U.S. or anything. Anytime you move out of the support system of your family or your community or whatever, and especially if you're moving abroad. These two little dogs, they have lots of haircuts, but these two, the white and the black one, they're my two Mexican street dogs that I've adopted, and they have traveled with me to Mexico, Guatemala, Rwanda, the U.S., back to Mexico. They keep me company. They give me kisses. They cuddle me. They give me cuddles when I have had to sit through meetings with 10 Mexican scientists who don't understand what I'm trying to say or whatever frustrating thing you have to go through because you're living in a different country or a different community or whatever might be difficult. And they help you get through a rough day. So whatever it does, for me, it's two Mexican street dogs that make it a little bit easier for me to get through the day. Find that thing for you that makes getting through the day a little bit easier and take it with you if it's to Rwanda, Nepal, Guatemala, wherever it may be, and take it wherever you go because it'll make every little step along your journey a little bit easier. So, thanks so much. Have a great day.